Mark stood quietly near the edge of the training hall where light from the ceiling panels fell in soft patterns across the floor. Around him, tall beings with colorful skin and strange features moved with relaxed confidence. They wore the official Peacekeeper training suits and spoke in low tones filled with amusement. The space station orbiting the neutral planet served as a shared ground for species to learn cooperation. This was where warriors became guardians of peace. It was also where Mark felt the weight of every stare. He was the only human among them. A Deathworlder, as they called him. The term meant someone from a planet where survival shaped every part of life. Earth had high gravity, wild nature, extreme weather, and constant threats. To most species in the galaxy, humans were unpredictable. Some saw them as dangerous. Others thought they were just stubborn. Very few truly understood what made them different. Today, 3 alien recruits stood in the middle of the hall with grins on their faces. Their species came from low-gravity worlds. They were fast and graceful, proud of their skill in close combat. Their leader, a tall figure with silver skin and sharp eyes, raised one hand and called out to Mark. "You have been quiet for too long," he said with a smirk. "Join us for a friendly duel, just a light match." "Nothing serious," the other aliens chuckled. One leaned in and whispered to another, clearly expecting entertainment. They had seen human physical stats. They knew about muscle strength and heat tolerance, but in their minds, humans were still slow, still clumsy, still outmatched. Mark turned toward them and gave a small nod. No words, no questions. He walked toward the center, his boots making soft sounds against the metal floor. As he stepped into the arena circle, a few other trainees paused their exercises to watch. The challenge had drawn attention. Friendly duels often turned into shows of ego. The alien leader introduced himself again for formality. Mark nodded once more and took his position. There were no weapons, just movement, just awareness. The rules were simple. No harm, no kill strikes. Just skill. As the duel began, the alien moved first. His steps were elegant, quick, smooth. He lunged with a sharp twist, expecting to catch Mark off guard. But Mark was not there. He had already shifted left. His body flowed around the attack like water around stone. No effort, no sound, just clean reaction. His feet barely touched the ground before he twisted back into center and faced his opponent again. Surprise flashed across the alien's face. He tried again, faster this time. A series of moves meant to trap Mark, but Mark responded with ease. He moved before the second strike was fully formed. He ducked low, slid past the alien's side, and tapped his shoulder with one open palm. A point. Gasps rose from the watchers. One of the other trainees, a green-skinned fighter with long limbs, muttered in disbelief. That was not just speed. That was prediction. The alien leader gritted his teeth and reset his stance. He was no longer smiling. He launched into a flurry of steps, rapid and skilled. He had trained for years in controlled combat, and no opponent had ever avoided every strike with such calm movement. Mark moved again. Not fast in the way machines move. Fast like a living thing tuned to chaos. His speed was real. His control was perfect. He dodged with barely an inch of space between him and the strikes. Not once did he lose balance. Not once did he break the calm look in his eyes. The other 2 alien recruits joined in. This was no longer about showing off. It became a test. They tried to outnumber him, surround him, pressure him into a mistake, but Mark did not panic. His eyes tracked them like a hunter's. His body flowed between attacks with ease. He ducked low when one came from the side. He spun backward when a strike came from above. He responded with light taps each time he found an opening. And he found many within minutes. The score was clear. Mark had earned more than enough points, but he didn't stop early. He stayed in the moment, focused, balanced, never aggressive. Just present. The match was called. The whistle sounded. Mark stepped back and gave a respectful nod. He showed no pride, no grin, no gloating. He offered one hand toward the alien leader as a gesture of good sportsmanship. The alien hesitated, then took it. His hand was firm, but his face showed confusion. He had not expected this. None of them had. Around the arena, whispers grew louder. Words passed between species in different languages, but the tone was the same in each one. The Deathworlder had outmoved them all. Mark walked away without looking back. His posture calm, his breathing steady, his footsteps quiet again behind him. The alien fighters remained still for a moment, their pride wounded, their thoughts shaken. What had looked like a joke had turned into something else in one simple duel. Mark had given them a glimpse of what life on a Deathworld creates: not rage, not power, but precision born from survival. And this was just the beginning. The training hall remained silent long after the duel ended. Mark had left the arena, but his movements still echoed in the minds of those who had watched. Whispers moved across the gathered trainees, soft and uncertain. Some tried to explain what they saw. Others stayed quiet, unsure how to describe it. The alien leader stood still in the center, arms crossed over his chest. He had trained with many across the galaxy. He had faced warriors from high-skill colonies and served under respected mentors. Yet nothing had prepared him for what happened today. He turned to his two fellow fighters. Both looked shaken. One rubbed his wrist as if the air around Mark had burned with unseen pressure. The other looked at the floor. His pride cracked like glass dropped from height. One word repeated itself across every conversation. Speed, not the kind measured by machines, not the kind learned from drills. This was something else, something born from a place where danger lived in every shadow. On the far side of the hall, a tall officer watched from a raised platform. He had said nothing during the match. His dark eyes followed Mark from the moment the duel began. Now, even as others whispered and guessed, he remained still. He tapped a small device on his wrist. The screen replayed the duel in slow motion. Mark's movements appeared blurred, even at reduced speed. His limbs moved with intention. His steps looked random at first, but when slowed, each one revealed a perfect balance of defense and placement. No wasted energy. No fiery voice beside the officer broke the silence. He did not attack, only responded. He moved like he had seen it before it happened. The officer gave no reply. His mind followed a deeper trail. He had read about humans. He had studied the reports. Words like unpredictable, dangerous, adaptable filled the pages. But those were just data, just theories. Today, he had seen a living answer below him. The alien fighters gathered again. They spoke in low tones now, no longer amused. The leader spoke first. That was not just training. That was instinct. He moved before I acted. He saw it all before. I made the choice, one of the others added. He never used force. Not once. He waited, watched, moved. That is not normal. That is not learned in a year, the third one asked. What kind of place builds this in someone? No one answered Mark. Meanwhile, sat alone on a metal bench in the rest zone beyond the hall. His hands rested on his knees, his breath steady. He drank water slowly and looked around the room. Some trainees glanced at him from a distance. None came close. He did not mind. He had seen this before. Fear always followed the unknown. Respect, if it came, would take time. He remembered Earth, the gravity that pulled harder than most planets, the storms that rose without warning, the forests, full of hidden teeth and unseen poisons. He remembered the training camps where young recruits learned to move with eyes closed and hearts steady, where you had to dodge faster than a falling tree and run quicker than a flash flood, nothing on. This station came close to that. And yet he understood the rules here. Show control. Show respect. Prove nothing unless needed. The door to the rest zone slid open. The tall officer from the platform stepped in. His presence quieted the room without a word. His steps carried weight. That came from command, not from pride. He walked to Mark and stopped in front of him. You moved like you were born in a battlefield. Mark looked up, gave a nod. Earth teaches you early. The officer sat beside him without asking. That alone surprised those watching. Officers never sat with trainees. Not during hours like this. The officer spoke again. You were holding back. Mark gave a slow breath. He looked forward and spoke calmly. This was not war. This was practice. You do not burn the forest to catch one rabbit. The officer stayed silent for a moment. Then he smiled, a small one. Not out of amusement, but out of understanding. I want the others to see this again. Not to challenge you, to learn, to understand what you carry. Will you show them? Mark nodded. I will. That night, the footage of the duel spread across the station, not as entertainment, as education. Officers used it to teach reaction speed and stance. Instructors pointed at Mark's movement and explained terms like economy of motion and predictive awareness. Trainees watched it in slow loops and still failed to grasp all of it. Some grew curious, some grew doubtful. Some grew inspired. The next day, when Mark entered the hall, the air felt different. Not cold, not heavy, but thoughtful. A small group of alien trainees approached him. No smirks, no pride. One asked if he would demonstrate the sidestep move again. Another asked how he balanced during rapid turns. Mark did not speak much, but he showed them, one by one. He corrected stances. He moved with them. He let them try, and slowly, the distance between human and alien began to shrink. They did not understand Earth. They had never seen a Deathworld. But they saw Mark, and through his calm presence, they saw something else too. Not threat, not danger, but discipline under pressure, clarity under fire. The duel was over, but the lesson had just begun. The training station moved slowly in orbit above the quiet planet. Its long metal arms glowed under soft sunlight. Inside the station, routines continued as usual. But in the minds of many trainees, one memory played again and again. A memory of a duel where speed broke all expectations. Mark, the human from Earth, had become the center of whispers and questions. Not because he wanted to be, not because he had claimed victory with loud words, but because he had done something rare. He had moved like lightning without force. He had fought without showing aggression. And he had won without pride. Each day, more trainees came to him. Some asked to see his moves again. Some came only to watch. A few tried to copy his stance but failed to match the balance. Mark never refused anyone. He taught with silence and calm steps. His answers were short but clear. His focus was not on showing off. He cared only for control and flow. The alien who had first challenged him watched from a distance. His pride still carried a bruise, but his curiosity had grown stronger. He no longer looked at Mark with doubt. He looked with respect, though he never said it aloud. One morning, a new session was announced. A mixed group of trainees would join for an advanced drill. The goal was simple. Move through a timed obstacle field without contact. Speed, precision, and memory would be tested. All species welcome, no ranks, no limits. Mark arrived early. He stood near the entrance to the course and studied the path ahead. The floor shifted every few seconds. The walls opened and closed in random patterns. Thin beams of light marked lines that must not be touched. Some parts of the track moved faster than the eye could follow. The alien officer from before stood at the far end of the hall. He gave a nod to Mark. The nod carried a quiet challenge, a signal that today was not for show. Today was for truth. One by one, trainees entered the course. Each tried their best. Some fell behind. Some touched the beams and had to stop. Some made it halfway and then gave up. The course was harder than it looked. Then Mark stepped forward. He did not run. He walked with slow steps toward the start line. His eyes followed every shift in the floor. He watched the walls move. He listened to the sounds of each pattern. In those few seconds, he mapped the course in his mind. The signal buzzed. Mark moved not fast like a sprinter, not wild like a fighter. He moved with rhythm, like music only. He could hear his steps danced between the beams. His arms stayed close to his sides. His eyes never blinked. He ducked under spinning arms. He slid across rolling ground. He leaped through narrow spaces with smooth grace. The path twisted without warning. He never slowed. Gasps filled the hall. Some trainees stood from their seats. The officer leaned forward with quiet eyes. The alien who had once mocked Mark now stood without words. What they saw was not luck. It was a human trained by a world that never allowed mistakes. Mark reached the final point. He stopped at the line. Not out of breath, not shaking, just calm. The timer blinked. Fastest recorded time. No contact with beams. No hesitation. A perfect run. Silence held the room for a few seconds. Then quiet claps began, not loud, not forced. Honest. Mark walked back with the same steps as before, light, balanced, unshaken. Later that day, in a side room near the training hall, the officer called Mark for a private talk. The room had only 2 chairs and a long table, no sound outside, no cameras. The officer looked at Mark for a long time. Before speaking, "Your world must be full of danger." Mark nodded once. "Tell me about it." Mark paused. His hands rested on his knees. His eyes stayed steady. "Earth does not wait. You learn fast or you do not survive. Our gravity pulls harder. Our animals hunt with speed. Our weather changes without reason. You wake up with a plan, then you adapt. Every hour brings something new." The officer listened without breaking eye contact. "Our training starts young. Not just strength, not just speed. We learn how to fall, how to breathe in panic, how to read space around us. We do not fight to win. We fight to live. And that teaches more than books." The officer leaned back in his chair. He understood now. What reports could never explain. Deathworlder did not mean violent. It meant forged. Each human carried the shape of their world in their bones. "You do not look for fights." The officer said. "No," Mark replied, "but you do not run from them either." "No." The room went quiet again. A silence not of tension, but of understanding. One being from a soft world, one from a hard one. Now speaking with equal voice. "I will request a new set of drills," the officer said. "Ones that teach your kind of movement. Ones that use your way of thinking. This station needs more than old patterns." Mark gave a nod. "I will help." And with those words, a shift began. Not in ranks, not in rules, but in minds. The station had always welcomed many species, but now it would learn from one that had been tested by chaos. Not just for speed, not just for skill, but for the deep calm that comes from surviving the storm. Mark left the room, his steps quiet as ever. But now more followed behind him, not because he led, but because he showed another way. The station halls no longer felt the same. There was a new energy in the air, not loud, not chaotic, but steady, calm, focused. The kind that comes when minds begin to shift and walls between species start to fall. Mark walked through the corridors with his usual quiet steps. He noticed the small changes. Trainees who once looked away now nodded in passing. Some even smiled. A few asked short questions, simple ones, about training, about movement, about Earth. He answered what he could. He showed what he knew. Number. Pride in his voice. No power in his tone. Just truth. The officer had kept his word. New drills were added to the daily schedule. They were different from the old ones. Not about strength alone. Not about memorized forms. These drills tested reaction, awareness, control, the way a fighter moved when danger came from the side. And time was thin. Some trainees struggled, others adapted. But all learned. Mark helped when asked. He stood with groups of mixed species and watched their forms. He corrected footwork. He adjusted balance. He showed how to breathe through panic. He never gave long lectures. He only used movement. Motion was his language. And they began to understand the alien who had challenged him in the first duel had changed as well. No more loud talk. No more smug smiles. He trained harder now. He asked better questions. He stood beside Mark during drills and studied his every step. Mark noticed. He gave no praise. But he gave time. And that meant more. One day, during a quiet lunch period, a group of trainees gathered near the mess area. The mood was light. Someone shared a story about a training accident. Laughter followed. Mark sat nearby, sipping water and listening. A young trainee from a thin-boned species turned toward him. "Is it true you once ran through a firestorm on your world, just to reach a safe zone?" Mark paused. He remembered the event, the thick smoke, the sky that turned red, the air that burned the lungs. He had run with others that day, not alone, not to prove anything. "Just to survive, yes," he said. The trainee's eyes widened. "And you were?" "Not afraid." Mark looked at the table. His voice calm. "I was afraid, but fear is not the end. It is the beginning. What you do after fear is what makes the path forward." The room fell quiet for a moment, not out of fear, but because truth had filled the space. Another trainee, this one taller, leaned forward. "How do humans live with that kind of pressure every day?" Mark thought for a second. "We do not think about it. We wake up. We prepare. We move. If it comes, we act. If it does not, we rest. But we stay ready." The officer who had spoken with Mark earlier stepped into the room. He heard the last part of the talk and gave a slow nod. "Tomorrow, we will hold a new type of test," he said. "Pairs from different species, one path, one goal. You must move together. Share sight, share speed, share mind." Eyes turned toward Mark. He said nothing. He only stood and walked out. The next morning, the arena changed again. New obstacles, new lights, new sounds. Each pair stood at the line. One human, one alien, no weapons, no devices. Only trust. Mark was paired with the alien from the first duel, the one who had once challenged him. Now they stood side by side, no tension, just stillness. The signal came. The path began to shift. Mark did not lead. He moved in rhythm with his partner. He gave space. He matched pace. When danger came from the left, he turned to block. When it came from the right, his partner stepped in. Their bodies moved like two parts of one design. Others tried to do the same. Some failed. Some argued. Some hesitated. But a few pairs found balance. The goal was not to race. It was to finish in unity. Mark and his partner reached the end. No wounds, no slips, no breaks in pace. The officer watched from above. He saw what he hoped to see. Not just movement. Not just training. But learning, growth, trust between kinds that once stood apart. Later that evening, a quiet gathering formed in one of the open lounges. The station allowed free time. Some played music. Some told stories. This time, Mark was invited to sit in the center. The alien who had once tried to outmatch him now spoke with open words. "I thought I knew what strength was. I thought it was control, speed, force, but you showed me something else. You showed me that strength can be quiet, that power can walk without noise, that fear can be a teacher." Mark looked at him with steady eyes. He gave a small nod, not of pride, but of agreement. "We are not so different," Mark said. "We all want to live. We all want to grow. But some of us come from places where every breath must be earned. That changes how we move, how we see, how we fight. But it does not change who we are inside." The group stayed silent, not in discomfort, but in reflection. Music played again, soft and slow. A strange mix of alien tones and human rhythm. Someone offered food. Someone shared old pictures, stories passed from mouth to mouth. Not about war, not about fear, but about strange weather, funny accidents, shared mistakes that night. The station felt more like one place. Not many places forced together, but one. A home made not from sameness, but from understanding. Mark sat near the edge and watched the stars through the clear panel above. No medals hung from his chest, no flags waved behind him. But he had earned something more. Something rare. He had turned respect into trust, not through power, not through words, but through calm movement, through quiet strength, and through the steady way he carried the name of his world. The station woke early that morning. Lights turned on with soft pulses. Doors slid open with smooth sounds, but something felt different in the air. Something clear, something still. It was the final day of joint training. Officers had planned one last session, a symbolic duel. Not for winning, not for showing strength. It was for memory, for closure, for shared learning. The arena had changed again. No traps, no moving floors. Just a wide-open space with clear lines. One side marked for the human, the other for the alien who once challenged him. Mark stood on one side, calm as always, his feet steady, his eyes clear. He stretched his arms slowly and breathed in the cold air. Across from him stood the alien, no longer proud, no longer smug. His posture straight, his mind quiet. This duel was not like the first. No crowd full of doubt, no voices waiting for mistakes. Today was different. Trainees from every species filled the seats. Officers watched from above. Some held recording devices. Some just wanted to see what trust looked like in motion. The signal buzzed. No rush, no surprise. Mark moved first this time, not with speed, but with care. His step forward was light, measured. The alien matched him. They circled, eyes locked, movements balanced. There were no real attacks, only tests. One would shift forward. The other would step back. One would turn. The other would follow. It looked like a dance, a silent language with no words. Each motion told a story, not of war, but of learning. Not of fear, but of respect. Mark moved close. His hand reached out, not to strike, but to touch the shoulder of his opponent. The alien paused, then did the same. They stepped back together, a perfect match. The duel ended with no points scored, no winner called, but the silence in the room held something strong, something deep when it was over. The officer stepped forward. He did not smile, he did not raise his voice, but his words carried power. This was more than a duel. This was a lesson. You have shown us that strength is not always loud, that speed can come with calm, that control is born from challenge. The crowd gave a long, quiet nod. Some clapped. Some touched their hands to their chest, a sign of honor. Mark looked around. He saw faces that once feared him, now open. He saw eyes that once judged him, now curious. He had not changed their minds with speeches. He had done it with action, with silence, with trust. Later in the day, the training group walked through the outer ring of the station. They passed the glass corridor where stars could be seen without filter. Mark stood there for a while. One trainee came beside him, the same young one who had asked about firestorms. Do you think Earth is the hardest world in the galaxy? Mark thought for a moment. No, there are other hard worlds, but Earth gave me something else. Not just strong legs or fast hands. It gave me the habit of watching, of waiting, of moving at the right time. The trainee nodded. Will you go back there after this? Mark looked at the stars. I might, but not yet. He turned to the trainee. There are things here worth staying for. Not because I must teach, but because I want to learn more too. That evening the officer called a final assembly. Each trainee stood in a circle. No ranks, no uniforms, only voices one by one. They shared what they learned, not just about skills, but about each other. About the value of patience, the power of calm, the strength in listening. When Mark's turn came, he said only one thing. We all came from different places, but we end this together. The officer stepped in. I agree. From that day forward, the station training manual changed. New chapters were added on reactive movement, on shared rhythm. On cross-species trust drills, Mark's name was listed in the notes, not as a hero, not as a legend, but as a model of clarity, a figure of quiet excellence. Trainees who joined the next cycle heard his story. They asked about the duel, about the obstacle. Course about the slow dance of the final match. They watched the footage, tried the moves, spoke the lessons, and in each new step, the echo of Mark's quiet strength lived on. He did not raise banners. He did not lead armies, but he taught the galaxy. One truth: that a Deathworld does not only create survivors, it creates teachers, carriers of wisdom through motion, bearers of calm through fire. Story ended not with a roar, but with stillness, not with fear, but with trust, not with power, but with peace. They end.